You're listening to Small Business Conversations with PKJ Podcast, where your host, Phyllis Johnson of PKJ Consulting, interviews entrepreneurs and small business owners on their passion, their knowledge, and their journey they took to start and grow their business. This podcast is meant to inspire, inform, and empower others interested in becoming successful. Are you ready to start on your own journey to success?
Greetings and welcome to another edition of Small Business Conversations with PKJ. I am your host, Phyllis Johnson of PKJ Consulting. PKJ Consulting provides accounting and consulting services for entrepreneurs and small businesses. Services include accounting, bookkeeping, consulting, human resources, operation, startup and administrative services, and more. Discovering your passion, utilizing your knowledge, and going on your journey to start and grow your business. This is the purpose of my podcast, to inspire others to take the leap and go after their dreams, whether it's while working a full-time job or simply leaving the corporate 9-to-5 behind. And today, I have the pleasure of interviewing someone who did just that. Not only did she leave, she also interviewed 50 others who did the same thing, whether it was in the form of simply becoming a freelancer, consultant, starting a brand new business, or going in a different direction totally, such as working in the nonprofit sector. Anna Lundberg is the founder of One Step Outside, where she helps people around the world build businesses and create a lifestyle that allows them an unimagined sense of freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment. She built her professional career in beauty and luxury marketing, working with big brands such as Dolce & Gabbana, Hugo Boss, and Burberry. Today, she continues to write and consult and train businesses on how to build powerful brands and effective marketing strategies, and how to best build and implement these in an organization. Since leaving her corporate job in 2013, she's now reimagining what success looks like, and she's passionate about inspiring and supporting others to do the same. Anna is the author of Leaving the Corporate 9-to-5, Stories from People Who've Done It and How You Can Too. Now, anyone who knows me and has been around me long enough knows I always say all I need is a laptop and Wi-Fi. And well, thanks to my Wi-Fi, I am interviewing Anna, who's all the way in London today. So let's jump in and get to know Anna. Good morning, Anna, or should I say good afternoon? How are you doing today?
Good evening from London. Hi, Phyllis. Thank you for having me.
So, I see that you work for some big name companies. Tell me more about the passion behind why you decided to leave and start working for yourself.
It's a great question, and it hasn't been very linear. I think that's maybe the case for a lot of us, and certainly a lot of the people in my book. I have to really go back to sort of before I got that first job, because it really was my first job in marketing. I had studied international relations and politics and economics, and I wanted to work at the UN, at the United Nations, and I did some internships there. But for whatever reason, I ended up in the private sector. So for me, to some extent, it was never really something that I went into, intentionally, really knowing what I was doing and passionate about it to begin with. So there were people around me who had done, marketing business degrees, and they were so excited about working at this big company that's incredibly successful in the industry. But for me, I was always a little bit detached from it. So fundamentally, I felt like it wasn't really where I wanted to be. And then I did stay there 7 years because it was a fantastic company. It was Procter & Gamble, so an American company based in Cincinnati. I was in Geneva in Switzerland. I learned so much, and my colleagues were amazing, and, the brands were fantastic and so on. But again, fundamentally, it wasn't really what I wanted to do. And I think during that whole time I was there, I kept telling myself and telling anyone else who would listen that, I didn't want to be there and I wanted to do something else, but I never did anything about it. And I'm still not entirely sure what triggered me. But for whatever reason, I guess I was kind of worn down over time. I asked for a sabbatical initially. So I went to travel 3 months in South America by myself. And it was during that trip that I got the courage to then sort of begin to imagine a world outside of this job that I was doing. And then I actually quit halfway through that sabbatical because I knew if I came back, I would probably settle back into my comfort zone.
Wow, that is amazing. I actually have a friend who is kind of in the same mindset. She actually just came back from London, and now she's kind of questioning whether or not she wants to continue with her company. So it sounds like what you did was you were kind of on that rat race and going, and then took a moment to step outside of everything that was around you to really make decisions. So that's an amazing thing that you were able to do. And a lot of people need to do that. You know, I do the same thing once a year. I go to Arizona and I just zone out and focus on what do I want to accomplish for the next 6 months to a year. So that's pretty amazing. So tell me a little bit more about your educational background. I was looking at your book and it said that you graduated as a valedictorian for school, but tell me a little bit more about the knowledge you acquired over the years to start your business.
Well, again, I think it was very organic, and it's funny that you mentioned the valedictorian piece, and I went to Oxford University, one of the sort of equivalent of Ivy League in England, and I say those things not because it's the prestige and status, although of course that is the case, but I say it almost the opposite because I felt like that education didn't set me up for success in the world as it is now. I was that eternal good girl in the sense that I was constantly looking for external validation from teachers, from parents to tell me that I was good, that I'd done the right thing, I had the right answer. And that approach just isn't useful in the world, and it definitely isn't useful as an entrepreneur. So in a way, the formal education, although of course it developed my creative thinking and curiosity and lots of knowledge and skills and all sorts, and time management and those things very important, and discipline. It didn't really equip me with the real world skills that I think I needed. So it has been, it was 5 years ago, almost 6 now, I guess, since I left my job. And there have been definitely some twists and turns since then. And initially I sort of fell straight into marketing consulting. So I took effectively the exact work that I was doing and just took it to different clients, which is a great way, and I write about that in the book as well, to take a step out of the 9 to 5 without taking too much of a step so that it becomes too much of a difference. So I was still very much leveraging the marketing, the business background and so on, and my network. But then I realized that was not a big enough step for me away from, what I wanted to do. I had much bigger a vision for what I wanted to do. And so I sort of quit that insofar as you can quit working for yourself. And then I went through what I like to call my hippie phase, when I rejected all of that business and marketing experience. And I discovered coaching, and I went traveling. And like you, I had my laptop and Wi-Fi, and I thought, this is amazing. I can go anywhere in the world and I can work for myself. But if I'm honest, I wasn't really taking it so seriously, in the sense that I was living on my savings and I really wasn't earning a lot of money. I kind of was quite comfortable because I'd been earning both in that full-time job, but then also as a consultant, I had quite a nice buffer, but I wasn't really planning for the future. So it's only after those 2 phases of first not taking a big enough leap and then maybe taking too much of a leap, I've now come to this really lovely balance where I've gone back to, well, not really gone back to, but I've accepted and acknowledged that I have all this business and marketing experience on the one hand, but I've also added the coaching skills and my life philosophy and my thoughts around, taking care of your well-being and all these other amazing things, and that I've mixed it all together into what I think is a much stronger business proposition. But as you can tell from my rambling there, it certainly hasn't been an obvious sort of step-by-step process from school to university to the work in the business and so on.
And that's perfect. I mean, I tell everyone that, I got my master's degree in entrepreneurship management, but there's nothing like hands-on training. So, I mean, a lot of times we have these degrees and it's very structured, but once you really try to start a business, there's nothing like hands-on training and actually getting down and doing it, because you really don't know what you don't know. And school is kind of there to give you the foundation, but you can be a consultant and there's 100 different types of way to do consulting. So I appreciate you saying that, even though you had the educational background and you took the step out to do what you were already doing, which is what, it is smart to do it that way, kind of like, okay, you're an accountant, so start an accounting firm. But then to take yourself to the next level, it is to offer other things and kind of continually grow. So I do appreciate, her pointing out that it's not a straight 1, 2, 3, 4 step path to starting your business and growing. It's a loop and a circle and going back and up and down and kind of figuring out as you go. And even, right now, I'm sure you're still trying to somewhat figure stuff out as it goes along.
Absolutely. It's a continuous evolution.
Yes. So you talked a little bit about, your knowledge and your passion and somewhat of your journey. Tell me a little bit more. I want to know more about the journey of how you created your book in specific.
Well, the book is a funny one because actually what happened again, I have to go back to 2013. When I went on that trip, even further back, I guess, I've always wanted to be a writer, whatever that means. So I've always written. When I was younger, I made up these ridiculous, awful sort of romantic novels a la Sweet Valley High kind of thing, but very, very poor copies. And, I wrote little fake newsletters and stuff. So that's always been on my mind. But I think parents, teachers told me, oh, you can't make a living being a writer. You can write in any career, so don't take that seriously kind of thing. And I guess I listened to that. But it's always been there for me. So when I initially went off to travel and then also quit my job, I did have this vague idea that I wanted to write. And what I did was I started a blog, which, now looking back is so basic. I had a free WordPress.com site. It's literally just like a greeny blue background and then text. But for me, it was a massive thing to start putting myself out there. And I know it is a big decision for people. It's a big deal to begin to write things that then random strangers around the world can read. And that started off as a travel blog. But then over time, it evolved into my career musings and more personal development, and ultimately became a platform for my business. And along the way, very early on, actually, I began to meet other interesting people, of course, who more interesting than me, who had already left their 9-to-5s and they were doing amazing things. And I must admit that it was mostly for selfish reasons at the beginning. I just wanted to inspire and reassure myself. So I began to ask if I could interview them for my blog, and, get their journey, a bit like you're doing now on your podcast, understand, what triggered them to leave, what were the challenges, where do they get the support, and what advice would they give. And so over the last 5-6 years, and I continue to do this now, I've been publishing this monthly series. And obviously it sort of came together, both in that I still want to and will continue to publish books and be an author. But on the other hand, I had these amazing stories. And in fact, now, as you said, I had 50 stories of people who had left their jobs. And given that I now coach people to leave their jobs and to set up their own business, it just all kind of came together in this magical place where sort of my personal goals and ambitions really suited putting these stories out there. So again, it happened quite organically that I already had the content, and it was more about shaping it into a book and adding that additional perspective and guidance around it.
Perfect. Shaping the content, that's something that I've interviewed a few people now, and they say the same thing. It's kind of you have this information that you're seeking, and it kind of becomes a book or a business. That's kind of the same way for me starting the podcast. Is I was inspired by other people's stories, and some of my clients, I'm inspired by some of the stuff that they do because I get to learn from them, even though I'm helping them. So I kind of like how you had that in your book. So One Step Outside, I love the name of your company. It's kind of like putting one foot forward to just go along your journey. How'd you come up with that name? And tell me more about your company and what you do.
Yeah, I'm really glad you like it. It comes from the quote, everything you've ever wanted is one step outside your comfort zone. So there's a couple of aspects to that I love. One is that you have to grow and get out of your comfort zone. And, I went to South America by myself. You mentioned, the importance of getting away from your natural environment, your existing friendship groups and that little bubble where you're living at the moment. So getting out of your comfort zone to grow and challenge yourself is one piece. But then, as you said, it's the one step. It doesn't have to be this massive leap. I think we tend to think in black and white terms that I'm over here in this corporate job and I'm miserable, and then way over there at this completely unreachable, impossible dream. And there are so many steps along the way. Again, with my journey, I took that big step for me to take a sabbatical, and then another big step to leave, another big step to set up the consulting, another big step to, leave the consulting. And each of those decisions is big and requires courage. But it's steps along the way that gets you closer and closer to where you want to be. And to be honest, you'll never really know where that place is to begin with. Certainly I didn't even know podcasting and coaching and all these things existed 5-6 years ago. So, it's not something you can sort of plan from behind your computer. But again, the business has evolved from my own personal experiences. So obviously, since I've left my job and since I was writing about this, and then combining that with writing and consulting around business and marketing, it's happened very organically that people have come to me for advice, both, and this is what I love really in the business, both around the concrete brand strategy and how do I do this, that and the other, but also, and even more importantly, the more sort of life coaching piece that we think of in terms of getting clear on that vision, overcoming your fears, and finding a practical way to manage it all. So I just love the combination of the two, because really we need both. So even though we might think it's the business guidance we need, often there's something else going on underneath. And obviously, as we said, it's an evolution in the business and also an evolution for me. I'm constantly challenging myself and growing the business. And I think the business and my clients will evolve with me as well.
Perfect. I love that. That's, exactly what you said, is getting everything you've ever wanted is one step outside. I love that quote. I'm writing it down. So tell me about one of your biggest wins or success stories in your journey.
Well, I'm going to have to say the book, simply because it was on my computer for like a year. And again, I've had this dream for my entire life. And I co-wrote a book a couple of years ago with a colleague, with a friend, which was a massive achievement. But it was, it was a thinner book. It was very sort of, it was a list. And again, it was kind of quotes from people, and it was very much rooted in my old life. So for the last few years, I've been really wanting to put something out there that was more reflective of where I was. And again, putting out these stories that I'm really proud of. So it had been sitting on my computer. I finally gave myself the deadline to publish by my birthday this year. And you'll be amazed what a deadline can do for yourself, because if I hadn't set that, then it would certainly still be sitting on my computer. And obviously the last few weeks were quite hectic, but that was a massive win for me this year to finally get that out there and to hold the book in my hand.
Congratulations. So she said something that I want to touch on a little bit. Set a deadline. A lot of times we have these goals that are just kind of in our head, in our dreams, and we kind of want to sort of do them and they sound good. But if we set a hardcore deadline, it makes it a reality, because then we have to sit down and say, okay, my goal for myself was to launch my podcast for Halloween. My favorite color is orange. My business colors are orange. I'm going to launch this on Halloween. Okay, that's great. What do I need to do to get to that launch date? Because on October 30th, I cannot just sit down and create this. So when you have a deadline, you really then sit down and kind of put together the framework of what is needed to do that deadline. Another thing that I do is, maybe you want to take some type of certification or something that costs money. What I've done in the past is say, okay, I'm going to, get my HR certification, for example. I would just pay for the test, and it would be in, 6 months or 3 months or whenever it was. And once you pay for something, you're going to kind of force yourself to take it a lot more seriously. So I love that you set a deadline and got that out. So tell me about a loss or a time where you had to learn a lesson from something that you did wrong.
Yeah, I love that, the orange and the Halloween. That's fantastic. And to be honest, that's something that came out in the book as well. A lot of people said, just buy the ticket, book the course, send the email, do it. Just nobody regrets it ever, whatever happens, even if they actually end up, not working on that particular business or even going back to full-time job. There's never any regrets around doing that thing that they've dreamed of for so long and just haven't quite dared. So 100% agree. In terms of losses, I feel like I've been very lucky, and, gratitude is something that's quite fashionable to talk about, but I do think that is important. And I do try to recognise, health-wise and family-wise, I've been very lucky. There have, in the last few years, been some personal illnesses in the family and myself as well and so on. So that has been, shaking things a little bit, but that's... since I am now shifting everything and reimagining success, as I call it, I feel like, I don't have regrets. I make sure that I spend time with the people who matter most, take care of myself and so on. So on a personal level, I really do my best to, I don't want to say be ready for that kind of thing, but, at least do what I can in the meantime. And work-wise, I guess I'm quite naive and I'm a big fan of lifelong learning. So I tend not to get too emotional about things that maybe other people would see as failures. And I see it all as, again, steps in the process. So you do a webinar, only a few people turn up. You launch a program, only a couple of people buy it. Whatever it is, each thing for me is just sort of a step along the way. And even if it takes longer than you think, I just see it as, actually I'm investing now in my future. I'm hopefully going to live for many more years. I'm definitely going to be working for many more years. So there's plenty of time. It's easy again to get very ambitious. This year I wanted to launch my group program, my book and the podcast. Funny you should say that too. And although I will have done those 3 things by the end of the year, I certainly wasn't able to do them all at the time when I thought I would. And I think, again, if we try to do everything right away, that's never going to happen. But it's totally feasible if you give yourself a 5-year deadline, 10 years or even more. So hopefully I'm taking every little so-called setback or sort of slow period or whatever it is as a learning experience, and then just getting up the next day and going again and moving forwards and steadily making progress.
I love that. It's not really a failure. It's a step in a process. A lot of times we, have these big, huge goals, and then we do it. And like she said, you have a webinar, for example, I want to do a webinar, and if only 10 people show up, is that a failure or is that a learning lesson? And sometimes we say, okay, 10 people showed up, never doing it again. But what we really have to rewire our minds to say is 10 people showed up. That's 10 people more than would have showed up yesterday. And then it's, well, how do I get to 20? So I like that she said it's steps in a process. So I'm going to now kind of wrap up what she said and go over some of the great tips that she said. One thing that I love that she said is everything you've ever wanted is one step outside, so we are always kind of scared to do something, but it's taking that one step. It's purchasing that one ebook. It's listening to that one podcast. It's signing up for that one webinar that's going to enlighten you to make a change in what you want to do with your life. Getting out of your bubble. That's a huge one. I mean, every day we have the same thing that's going around us, the same people, the same conversations, the same Facebook friends, everything's the same. So it's really hard sometimes to step out of your reality. She goes to South America. I go to Arizona. I love to travel as well. So, maybe you can't afford to do as much traveling. Maybe you just go to the other side of your town and book a hotel room for a weekend and just focus. So that's something that's really important because it clears your mind of the day-to-day tasks that are in your brain. The number 3 thing that she definitely said that I loved was set a deadline. Whatever your goal is, doesn't matter how big or small it is, set a deadline and then work backwards to figure out what is going to need to accomplish that goal. So if it's to start a business, it's, start your business by January 1st. That's great. You have a whole month and a half to do it. What are the steps to do it? Who's going to be able to help you? What do you need? It's easier to break it down into little tasks. And as you accomplish those goals, you feel so much more successful. And then January 1st comes and your business is launched. So, Anna, I want to thank you so very much for joining our podcast today. Do you have if people want to get in contact with you, how would they be able to reach you?
Yeah, thank you, Phyllis. It's been such a pleasure. So the company is One Step Outside, so you can find me pretty much everywhere, onestepoutside.com. And in particular on Facebook, I have a page, but really the group, the One Step Outside group, is a great place to be. I'm in there every week doing free sort of inspirational or practical training sessions. I'm answering questions every day. And most importantly, there's a group of like-minded people who are working on similar or even very different goals in their lives. So the One Step Outside Facebook group is a great place to interact with people and help you move towards those goals and deadlines that you've set yourself.
Perfect. And if you hadn't had a chance, go to Kindle and check out her ebook. And thank you so very much. Have an amazing day.
Thank you, Phyllis.
Thanks for listening to Small Business Conversations with PKJ. Want to learn more or listen to prior episodes? Go to pkjpodcast.com. Please tune in to the next episode where we will interview another amazing guest on their passion, knowledge, and journey to success.